International Court of Justice holds a hearing for South Africa's argument in its request for further provisional measures to protect Palestinians in Rafah. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in the city of Harbin for the second day of his two-day state visit to China. And after the assassination attempt against the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, the Interior Minister declared that the country is on the brink of civil war and asked to ease tensions. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In the Netherlands, the International Court of Justice held a hearing at the request of South Africa, which submitted arguments to the Israeli incursion in the city of Rafah, calling it a genocide operation that threatens Palestinians. On Thursday, South Africa lawyers started the audience at the headquarters of the highest jurisdiction of the United Nations organization. They seek to sue Israel and order a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Subsequently, on Friday, the Tel Aviv regime will make known its response regarding the massacre they have been committing since October 2023. In this context, it should be noted that in January, Pretoria filed a complaint with the ICJ denouncing the acts committed by Israel on Palestine, seeking to prevent further genocidal actions against Gazans. The International Court of Justice heard arguments from South Africa denouncing Israel for implementing a new and horrendous phase of genocide against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip.
The African country considers that the genocidal operation threatens the survival of the Palestinians and demands the immediate cessation of the Israeli incursion into the Gazan city of Rafah.
Is yet again compelled to return to this court in recognition of its obligation under the Genocide Convention, due to the continuing annihilation of the Palestinian people, with over 35,000 now killed and most of Gaza reduced to rubble. Despite the short notice of this oral hearing, South Africa has traveled here today to do what it can to urgently stop the ongoing genocide. The gravity of the attacks requiring urgent and speedy proceedings to preserve the rights of the Palestinian people, a commitment which South Africa takes seriously.
Lawyer Vusumo Simandosela questioned that the South Africa expected, the last time it appeared before this court, that this genocidal process would be stopped.
Its attacks on Palestinians in Gaza, and in so doing is willfully breaching the binding orders of this court. Israel similarly breaches the binding resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, erroneously believing from the lack of countermeasures by the international community that it is exempt from having to respect international law. This institutionalized impunity has led Israel to engage in this genocide, which has shocked the conscience of humanity.
Instead, the Israeli genocide against Gaza has continued and reached a new and horrendous phase that seeks to destroy life in Palestine and wipe them off the face of the earth.
The genocidal acts described in South Africa's application were foreseen and foreseeable from the onset. Israel's intent was always to destroy Palestinian life and to wipe them off the face of the earth. Rafah is the final stand. Without Rafah, there is no more Palestinian life in Gaza to speak of, no more Palestinian identity, and no possibility of reconstruction. Mr. President, the rule of law can only survive through the orders of this court. If the rule of law is to have any meaning, let it be today. And with this case, it is no longer enough to order unhindered access to humanitarian aid when it is in fact the military operation in Gaza that is preventing it. It is no longer enough to encourage compliance with the peremptory precepts of the Genocide Convention when Israel's deliberate contempt for the international rule of law has been so plain and so public.
In the activity that takes place this Thursday, the South African representation requests provisional measures to protect the Palestinian population from further serious and irreparable violation of their rights.
International non-governmental organizations on Thursday condemned the Israeli army's assault on Rafah and demanded the international community to take urgent actions to stop human rights violations. In a joint statement, United Nations officials and humanitarian non-governmental organizations denounced that despite multiple calls by international community to the Tel Aviv government to abstain from expanding its ground offensive into Rafah, Israeli troops entered the area on May 7th. They also pointed out that significant responsibility that the United States bears for the human rights violations committed by Israel, as the Western country is the regime's main supplier of munitions. Furthermore, the organizations reiterated that the Israeli evacuation orders are a grave violation of international humanitarian law. In Palestine, U.S. forces set up a temporary humanitarian dock on the enclave's shore for the entry of humanitarian aid and other supplies across land borders has largely stopped since Israel began its incursion into Rafah last week. The aid will be loaded onto trucks that will begin disembarking in the coming days, U.S. Central Command said in a statement on Thursday morning. The United Nations will receive the aid and oversee its distribution in Gaza, according to the Central Command, which said no U.S. troops would set foot in the territory. Dozens of humanitarian organizations that have denounced the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza reject the double standards by the United States and its Western allies, who talk about bringing humanitarian aid to the Gazan population while simultaneously approving more budgets to arm the Israeli government. In Bahrain, the 33rd Arab League Council Summit opened on Friday in Manama, its capital, in the presence of a number of leaders, presidents, kings and princes of Arab countries and heads of participating delegations. The event focused on a number of political, security, economic, social and cultural issues on the agenda of the meeting of Arab foreign ministers. On the 12th of this month, a meeting of the Economic and Social Council was held at ministerial level to prepare for the summit, at which several issues were discussed. The most important of them was an emergency response plan to address the economic and social impacts of Israeli aggressions in the Gaza Strip. They also reviewed the progress made in the completion of the Greater Arab Free Trade Zone and the establishment of the Arab Customs Union. Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin arrived in the city of Harbin for the second day of his two-day state visit to China. The official visit is part of President Putin's first trip abroad since his March election victory, and the second in just over 6 months to China. It is a political and economic approach between the two countries aiming at strengthening their cooperation in different areas, which was materialized through the signing of a joint statement that was released early following a closed-door reunion. With this meeting, both leaders ratified their will to continue working for peace and to confront the hostile policy of the West as part of the construction of a new world order. Earlier on Thursday, the President of China, Xi Jinping, highlighted the importance of good bilateral relations for joint development and global current affairs.
The ups and downs of China-Russia relations over 3/4 of a century have shown that consolidating and continuously developing the permanent good neighborly China-Russia friendship, comprehensive strategic coordination, and mutually beneficial cooperation are in line with the fundamental interests of the two countries and their peoples. It meets the expectations of the international community and the development trend of the times. It is of irreplaceable importance.
For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin highlighted the results of 75 years of relationship with China.
75 years is a short period by the standards of the centuries-old history of Russia and China. But during this period of time, we have been able to achieve serious results, accumulating valuable experience of close, good neighborly interaction, incorporate joint successes and achievements, as well as important historical lessons.
The Interior Minister of Slovakia, Matus Stok, declared that the country is on the brink of a civil war and asked to ease tensions after the assassination attempt against the Prime Minister, Robert Fico. Stok appeared in the local news accompanied by the Minister of Defense, who declared that a suspect was in custody. The head of internal politics reiterated that the attack against the Prime Minister was politically motivated. He also called on the country to de-escalate tensions and asked to stop the hatred immediately before the conflict intensifies. Regarding the Slovakian Prime Minister's health, he assured that his life is out of danger and that he is recovering satisfactorily from his operation. In this context, the Slovak President Zuzana Kaputova calls for an end to a vicious cycle of hatred in the country.
Let's step out of the vicious circle of hatred and mutual accusations. What happened yesterday was an individual act. But the tense atmosphere of hatred has been our collective work.
People outside the Banska Bystrica hospital, where Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico is staying after being shot, react in horror to the attack.
Sorry that such things are happening in Slovakia. I'm outraged by it, and I'm certainly afraid that such attacks will be repeated. It's terrible. Such cruel things shouldn't happen in this century.
Violence has plunged New Caledonia into a crisis of security, identity and politics amidst demonstrations against a controversial electoral reform. The riots in the South Pacific French territory have been going on for 3 consecutive nights, leaving 5 people dead, including 2 policemen and several hundreds wounded. Largely indigenous protests against a French plan to impose new voting rules on the archipelago have spiraled into the deadliest violence since the 1980s. New Caledonia, which lies between Australia and Fiji, 17,000 kilometers from Paris, is one of the several territories around the globe that remain part of France in the post-colonial era. On Thursday, Chad's junta leader, General Mahamat Idris Deby Itno, won the African nation's May 6th presidential elections, as it was informed by the Constitutional Council. After obtaining 3,770,279 of the votes, which is more than the absolute majority of votes cast, the general secured his victory in the run for the presidential elections according to the final results. The highest electoral authority declared the winner and announced the rejection of a bid by Prime Minister Success Masra to annul this outcome, who also called on supporters to protest in his favor. In this regard, Masra came second with 18.5%, while former Prime Minister Albert Pahimi Padake won 16.9%. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The collection of signatures continues in Venezuela to demand the lifting of the sanctions imposed by the United States government against the Venezuelan people. The presidents of the national banks accompany Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez in the demand of the Venezuelan people for the lifting of the coercive measures that affect the country's economy. She also denounced the intentions of the United States and its extremist allies to appropriate the wealth of Venezuela. Delcy Rodriguez reaffirmed the anti-imperialist and anti-colonialist character of the South American country.
What we are doing today is a reaffirmation precisely with our workers and our women workers to demand the lifting of the blockade. A blockade that has sought to asphyxiate Venezuela, to asphyxiate its economy, to asphyxiate, to torture its national body through crude and criminal unilateral coercive measures.
The Executive Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, reiterated the public denunciation of the intention of the United States to steal Venezuelan oil.
The direct mandate between the government of the United States and the extremists, the connivance, the complicity to harm the people of Venezuela. What does the United States want from Venezuela? Well, a former president said it very clearly. We want to steal your oil. Pay for Venezuelan oil? No, we don't want to pay for the oil. The gringos say, we want to steal Venezuela's oil. We don't want to pay anything, and for that they need an extremist political class. The extremists, why do the extremists want political power? Do they want it for the benefit of the working men and women, to whom they have done immense damage? No, they wanted precisely to steal the material wealth of Venezuela.
In Peru, the Minister of the Interior, Walter Ortiz Acosta, resigned from his post a month and a half after being sworn in. The minister presented his resignation in the midst of questionings for interference in the ongoing investigations of the appointed President Dina Boluarte and her brother Nicanor Boluarte. According to local media, Ortiz Acosta will be replaced by the Vice Minister of Internal Order, Juan José Santibáñez, who will be sworn in this afternoon. Last week, the former minister backed a decision to withdraw police support to the special team of prosecutors against corruption in power that is investigating the president and her brother for being part of a criminal organization and for using their position for influence trafficking. In this sense, legislators, most of them leftists, based themselves on the prosecutor investigations involving President Dina Boluarte in 2 corruption cases to issue a motion of presidential vacancy. According to the judiciary, the president claims to be the object of fiscal diligences without the presence of her technical defense and the violation of her constitutional right of defense and procedural equality. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court summoned the head of state to a hearing on Tuesday, May 21st, to protect her rights in the case of illicit enrichment. On Thursday, in Uruguay, the Single National Union of Construction and Annexes held a partial general strike and a march to the Ministry of Labor to make their concerns visible. The union members denounced the trend towards the precociousness of work conditions as a result of the lack of state supervision. The demonstrators also demanded greater controls to warranty compliance with the law and collective bargaining agreements, warning of an increase in informal labor. The union leader, Richard Ferreira, stressed that this strike and mobilization are part of a national campaign for work in response to the loss of between 10,000 and 11,000 jobs.
It has to do with work. It has to do with public investment and the dynamization of the construction industry, since some projects have ended and therefore 11,000 jobs have been lost. There is great concern about the job expectations based on investment for this year and for next year, considering that the national budget will be discussed on the basis of a new government and that it will begin to be applied in 2026. The second thing has to do with deregulation. There is a growing number of informal or illegal work, so there are average percentages of informal work around 20%, but in some departments it is more than 50%. We understand that not only the companies but also the government must take action to ensure that the regulations, the agreements, and the legislation are complied with, and that they are enforced.
The livery and legacy of Qatar Hassan Abdullah Al Tawadi assured on Wednesday that his country has the capacity to organize the Olympic Games. During his participation in the Doha Economic Forum, the official reaffirmed the country's ability to manage the Olympic events in the best way and reiterated the desire to host the Games in 2036, but made it clear that the decision rests with the International Olympic Committee. On the topic, the secretary pointed out that the country is still reaping benefits after organizing the FIFA World Cup in 2022, and its infrastructure makes it ready to host more events in all fields, not only in the world of sports. Let's go to the United Kingdom, where the 20 clubs that make up the Premier League will vote at the annual meeting scheduled for June 6th on the possibility of eliminating the video assistance referee, known as VAR, starting next season. The request was originally made by the Wolverhampton club, which claimed that the system has had negative consequences in the relationship between fans and football. In this sense, the club also alleges the VAR removes the essence of the game, citing its impact on goal celebrations and stating it causes confusion on the pitch while plays are being scrutinized. The proposal now needs the support of the clubs at the June 6th General Assembly, where 14 votes in favor from the 20 teams that make up the Premiership will be required. The Ministry of Culture of France returns 2 paintings seized from the Nazis to their rightful owners. Recent research has revealed that art dealer and rightful owner Gregory Stutzmann was forced to flee from Paris in March 1941 to escape anti-Semitic persecution. To finance his escape and ensure his livelihood, he had to sell several paintings, among them the Renoir and the Sisley. These works were bought by a German art dealer who sent them to Germany, where they were found after the war. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.